A rectangle has an area of 114 square centimeters and a perimeter of 50. What are its dimensions? What are its length and its width? Okay. So for this one, we have to remember, so a rectangle, let me just draw a rectangle, a simple one. So a rectangle so there's a rectangle. Let me put in, let me fill it out all together there. And so here we have a rectangle, okay? And notice this rectangle is what? 4 squares tall and 5 squares wide, isn't it? So the area inside, how many squares inside? Well, you know, it's just 4 times 5. You just multiply, right? Because there's 5 columns of 4 or 4 rows of 5, whatever you want to say. So the area of a rectangle is just length times width, isn't it? It's just one side times the other. That's the space inside. There's a total of 20 squares inside. Now the perimeter means around the whole outside. So if you go around the whole outside, it would be 5 this direction, and then 4 this direction, and then 5 this direction, and then 4 that direction. To go around the whole outside would be 4 twice and 5 twice, all added up. What's that, 18? So in other words, notice the perimeter formula is 2 lengths and 2 widths added up. So here we have the perimeter formula, and here we have the area formula for a rectangle. So I just made up a real life example just to help you see. Perimeter is just 2 lengths and 2 widths added up. Area is just length times width. Okay. So with that in mind, let's use those formulas. They're telling us we're going to use area. So it's good to have those formulas on your notes for the exam. Area is length times width. And perimeter is 2 length plus 2 width. Now what did they tell us? Area is 114. So this will be, let me switch these here. So this will be 114 is L times W, right? Area was 114. And perimeter is 50. So perimeter is 50. So that'll be 50 is 2L plus 2W. Okay, so there's our 2 equations with 2 letters. So how do we go about handling that? Well, there's lots of different things you could do. I think what would be easiest would be to start with this equation. I'm going to start with this one because why? Because he's easier because the other one has the L and the W multiplied. That's gonna, if you try to solve for L or W there, like what if I took the 114 is L times W and I wanted to solve for W? Well, you would divide by L. And then you got fractions, right? We don't want fractions. So I'm going to start with the other guy instead. I'm not going to do that, and I'm just going to take this guy. I'm going to start with this guy, and I'm going to solve for one of the letters. It doesn't matter which one. Let's just solve for L, whatever. So solve for L, subtract 2W from both sides, right? And so then what do we get? These cancel. We get 50 minus 2W is 2L. How do you solve for L now? Divide through by 2. Cancels out. And so L is 25. These cancel, minus W. So I've got my hands on L. L is 25 minus 2W. See how there's no fractions? It's better to use this equation and then the other one so we don't have fractions. Okay, so I've got L alone. So now I'm going to plug that in. Plug into the other equation, right? We get one letter alone in one equation, plug it into the other. So let me plug into this. Let's grab this one, bring it down here. 114 is L times W. And then I'll grab this right here and plug in for L. So I get 114 is L, and what's L? 25 minus W times W. Now I can solve for W. Distribute. So what we basically did a fancy substitution, right? We took these two equations right here. I solved for L in the easier equation where it wouldn't produce fractions. Found L and then plugged that into the other equation. So now, what do we got? 114 is 25W minus W squared. Okay, it's time to go into our W squared with an equals plan. What do? How do you solve something like this? Step 1. Get a 0 and move W squared to the side where he'll be positive W squared. So remember, whenever X squared or W squared shows up, your first plan is to get a 0 and move the X squared or the W squared to the side where he'll be positive. So I'm going to jump these guys over here, aren't I? Because W squared is negative on this side, it's just difficult to deal with the W squared being negative. So move him to the other side, it'll become positive W squared minus 25W plus 114 equals 0. I don't want that to seem like magic. I just really subtracted 25W and added W squared to both sides, didn't I? That's really what we just did there, right? And it just canceled these guys out, producing a 0 on the right side, and now we've got the signs you see on the other side. I just rearranged them, but those are their signs. Okay, so that's step 1. Now, let's keep going over here. So step 2. You can try to factor, with the 2 parentheses, or you can use the quad. I think this would be a good time to use the quad because that's not an easy one to factor. So it'd be easier to do the quad. So let's do that. Let's dive into the quadratic formula. So it's going to be W equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. So A, let's go up here. A here is plus 1. B is the minus 25. C is the 14, right? So W equals negative B negative negative 25 plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 25 squared B squared minus 4 times A, which is 1 times C, which is 114, all over 2 times A. So we get W equals, that's going to be plus 25 plus or minus square root of, that'll be, use your calculator, positive 625. Negative times positive mean negative, whatever 4 times 114 is. I'm getting 456 all over 2. And so that's 25 plus or minus, what we got in there? Square root of 169 all over 2. So that's 25 plus my square root of 169 is 13. Like that. And so that means W, now we do the 2 options, 25 plus 13 over 2, or 25 minus 13 over 2. And so, come back up here. So that means what is that? 38 over 2, 19. Or subtract that, what is that? 12 over 2, which is 6. So we've got two answers for W, 19 or 6. So we got two answers for the width. Now, what that really means, we're saying either one of those could be length also. So basically the width is, here, let me go back there. The width is 19 or the width is 6, and the length is the other. So it doesn't really matter which one you call width and length on a rectangle. It doesn't matter. So one of them is 19, the other is 6. Width is 19, length is 6, or vice versa. In other words, yeah, let me just write that. You can have width 19, length 6, or you can have length 19, width 6. It doesn't matter. Now, they got particular, and they said they wanted it a certain way. What'd they say? They said length is bigger than the width. See how they're saying that? They want the one with the length bigger. They want us to say it that way. So that would be this way, not the other way. So length 19, width 6. So length 19, width 6. Technically, it could go either way. It doesn't really matter. So there we go.